I just took an umbrella when I went out." Little did I expect to pick up the school's most beautiful girl and bring her home. I originally thought she just wanted to escape the rain, but instead, she shed tears with a look of grievance. Renkun, right then, walking alone in the rain on my way home. My mind echoed with the scene from earlier that day when I was rejected by Rina. Oh well, I suppose I shouldn't bother her anymore. Looking up, however, I saw a young girl sitting dejectedly on a park bench. As I drew closer, I realized, wasn't she from our school? Yet in the driving rain, she looked as helpless as a little stray kitten. I mustered up the courage and held my umbrella over her head. Sensing my arrival, she actually called out my name accurately. "Are you Ren?" Though her voice was so faint, it was almost drowned out by the sound of the heavy rain. A flicker of emotion stirred in my heart. "You'll catch a cold if you stay out here like this. Aren't you going home?" But she turned her head away without a word. It was only now that I noticed. Her clothes were filthy, and her skirt looked as though she hadn't changed it in days. After a long silence, she suddenly muttered softly, "I have nowhere left to go." Hearing this, I frowned, as if thinking of something. Seeing her body trembling nonstop, I slowly spoke up. "If you don't mind, would you like to come to my place?" I half expected to be ruthlessly rejected, but her eyes welled up with tears. "Is that really okay?" I simply held out my hand to her. "As long as you're willing." Mio stood in my entryway, not moving an inch, looking somewhat flustered and at a loss. Sensing her awkwardness, I handed her a set of clothes and a towel. "You got caught in the rain, so go take a bath first. The bathroom is down the hall on the right. Shampoo and body wash are fine to use." I turned around and headed straight for the kitchen. When Mio walked out of the bathroom, she happened to see me placing a steaming bowl of something on the table. "Eat up," I said simply, not offering any explanations, just glancing at her with a calm expression. Before Mio could say anything, I brought over a cup of hot water and 2 sheets of medicine, placing them on the table as well. Then I moved away from the sofa area. Mio sat at the table with mixed feelings. Her first instinct was undoubtedly to resist, but her body urged her to accept. After all, hunger had completely taken over her brain. She glanced over at me, sitting at another desk, doing homework, as if she didn't even exist. It was clearly just ordinary fried rice, yet the moment she tasted it, her cheeks flushed with shyness. 10 minutes later, Mio had eaten every last bite clean. And right at that moment, I brought up the question that had been lingering on my mind. "Please trust me to keep this a secret from others. What did you mean when you said you had nowhere to go?" After sobbing quietly for a long time, Mio finally began to speak. A little over a week ago, her parents had tragically died in a car accident. Now she was no different from an orphan, with no relatives willing to take her in, and her grandparents had already passed away. I listened with a deep frown. Now I finally understood why Mio had been sitting there crying all by herself. To have such a tragic thing happen and be forced to bear it all alone, it was simply too much for her. The room was dead silent, save for Mio's faint, muffled sobs. I had no idea what I should do. Mio was our class representative. Not only were her grades top-notch, but her popularity among everyone was exceptionally high. Yet right now, she was crying in front of me like a broken doll. At that moment, I only knew one thing for certain. No matter what, I couldn't let Mio leave. Given her current state, staying by herself was definitely unsafe, especially with the heavy rain still pouring outside. With that thought, I spoke up directly. "Just stay here. You can leave whenever you find somewhere else to go." She hurriedly waved her hands in refusal, but before she could finish, I suddenly raised my head, looked right at her, and said in a deep voice, "Otherwise, I'll call the police and let them look after you." Mio sniffled a few times, her tear-filled eyes turning toward me with a hint of reproach. "Is this how you talk to Rina, too?" My mouth opened, my gaze freezing in place. Her expression seemed to say, "No wonder your confession failed." I lowered my head, completely speechless, losing all the momentum I had just a second ago. Seeing my wretched state, Mio actually bit her lip and let out a small laugh, even though tears still hung at the corners of her eyes. I awkwardly clicked my tongue. "Just stay here. Consider it my plea, okay?" This was the most sincere thing I could possibly say, and I tried my best to put on a slightly gentle expression. "Thank you, but why are you helping me?" Mio blinked in surprise. "Besides, I've never heard any bad rumors about you in class. The only thing people say about you is that time you confessed to Rina. To me, that is a bad rumor." "Aren't you afraid Rina will be upset if you say things like that?" "Whatever. It has nothing to do with me anymore," I shrugged, looking completely unconcerned. Testing the waters, she asked, "Do you not like her anymore? There's no point in holding on to something that won't give you an answer." Mio hung up her damp clothes to dry. Afterward, she sat dazed on the sofa, having no idea what to do, watching as I went back to studying. But before long, I started scratching my head in frustration over a problem. Mio slowly walked over to my side, and seeing that I was troubled by a math problem, she reached out her finger and began patiently explaining it to me. I listened intently, nodding from time to time. By the time we looked up, it was already 2:30 in the morning. I packed up my things and looked over at Mio. Though my emotional intelligence left much to be desired, I at least knew I shouldn't let a girl sleep out on the sofa. But Mio repeatedly refused. Being allowed to stay here at all was already something she was deeply grateful for. The two of us went back and forth, politely declining each other all the way from the living room to the bedroom. I switched on the bedroom light. Mio saw that the inside of the bedroom was clean and tidy, nothing like the typical room of a guy living alone. The bed was spacious enough for two people with room to spare. Seeing how persistent I was, Mio refused to back down either. "Then let's both sleep in the bedroom." "Why should you have to sleep on the floor?" We argued back and forth for about 5 minutes. Mio realized just how stubborn I could be, and with the hour growing late, she finally suggested a compromise we could both barely agree on, placing a thick duvet down the middle of the large bed as a barrier, with each of us sleeping on opposite sides. A flush of unmistakable red appeared on Mio's face. She had actually, on a whim, agreed to sleep in the same bed as a boy from her class. She sat down on the left side of the bed, feeling a bit uneasy. It was only now that it truly hit her. She was a girl after all. How could she feel so safe sleeping here? Her awareness of danger was way too low. What if I decided to do something to her? What then? After a little while, I walked in, wearing a thin silk pajama set that clearly outlined the muscle definition beneath the fabric. Mio took just one quick glance before hurriedly looking away, the tips of her ears turning quietly red. Once the bedroom lights went out, the two of us lay in bed back to back, separated by the duvet barrier. She squeezed her eyes shut, but opened them again a moment later, because she simply couldn't fall asleep. Her entire focus was on me on the other side. A full 30 minutes passed before Mio heard my steady breathing. Realizing I must have fallen asleep, she relaxed slightly, only to dream of her parents slowly walking further and further away. When she snapped her eyes open and sat up with a start, she realized it was already morning. Soon after, the rich aroma drifting from the kitchen instantly woke up her sleeping stomach. Mio stepped out of the bedroom and looked toward the kitchen. She saw me wearing an apron and cooking. At that exact moment, I turned around and locked eyes with Mio standing behind me. Mio greeted me in a soft voice. Looking at the bento box placed on the dining table containing the meal I had just prepared, Mio suddenly remembered. In the past, I always brought my own lunch to school instead of eating at the cafeteria. "Why do you always pack your own lunch? The school cafeteria food is fine, isn't it?" I gave a brief reply. "My family has certain dietary restrictions and customs." "Is that so? No wonder. Looking at your features, I suppose you do kind of look like it." "Breakfast is ready," I said, pointing toward the steaming food on the side. By this point, Mio's stomach had long been awakened by the aroma, and it let out a hungry rumble. Mio nodded softly, though she didn't start eating right away. When she finally sat down at the dining table, too, I ate my breakfast while asking, "Are you still going to school?" "I'll probably have to wait until tomorrow." Then, taking a key out of my pocket, I tossed it right in front of Mio. "Otherwise, I won't be able to get back inside my own home." Looking at the key before her, Mio knew I was afraid she had nowhere to go and might secretly run away. She picked up the key and replied quietly. She couldn't possibly stay at my place forever. Even though I intended to let her stay, I couldn't just recklessly. Yet the money she had in her pockets wasn't enough to rent an apartment outside either. Continuing her education was the priority. She couldn't just drop out of school to work now. Aside from agreeing to stay here temporarily, She really had no other choice. After breakfast, I packed my things and hurried off to school, leaving without giving Mio any special instructions. Looking around the empty apartment, Mio couldn't help letting out a sigh. She decided she would tidy up the place a bit for me. After all, she was crashing here, and once she got things sorted, she'd go out and buy some clothes. But when she walked into my home fitness area and saw the heavy dumbbells lined up, a headache immediately came on. Those looked exhausting just to look at. Sitting nearby was a cardboard box filled with stacks of letter-like papers and some small gift boxes. She crouched down, pulled out a sheet, and glanced at the contents. A flash of surprise crossing her eyes. Were these all the love letters I used to write to Rina, along with the gifts I bought? Soon, the afternoon school bell rang, and I was already walking home. Along the way, I passed the bench where I had found Mio the day before. I really should have gotten her phone number. What if she actually ran away? I only had that one spare key. Standing outside my front door, I knocked. A moment later, I heard footsteps approaching from inside, and I let out an instant sigh of relief. The person standing in the doorway looked somewhat different from the one I'd seen that morning. She seemed much more vibrant and radiant. Even her eyes seemed to shimmer with a faint light. "You're back!" Hearing my words, Mio lowered her head and muttered softly, "I already promised you. How could I possibly run away? By the way, did you really not bring a phone? I was worried I wouldn't be able to reach you if something came up." Hearing this, Mio turned her head away with an embarrassed look. "A few days ago, I threw my phone into the river." You really are something else, I thought, looking at her helplessly. She didn't feel at all like the class representative from my memories, the one who was good at taking care of others, kind-hearted and cheerful. Instead, she felt more like a crying lost child I'd picked up while taking a casual stroll outside. I turned around and walked into the bedroom. When I came back out, I was holding a smartphone. Use this for now. My old phone still works. I'll swap my second SIM card into it for you later, so at least I can stay in touch with you. Mio took the phone, an expression of shock appearing on her face, her eyes filled with disbelief as she looked at me. Even though it was an old phone, was I really just giving it to her like that? Why are you treating me so well? Is it because of Rina? In her mind, that seemed like the most likely answer. Could it be because she had a close friendship with Rina, and I still had feelings for Rina? I don't think of this as doing you a favor. I think of it as something I ought to do, just like how you helped clean up my place. Besides, whatever I do has absolutely nothing to do with Rina. After that, I sat down at my desk and got to work studying. Mio, meanwhile, sat over by the sofa tinkering with the phone. Noticing there were photos inside, she instinctively wanted to back out. After all, this was my privacy. But driven by curiosity, she tapped on some screenshots and discovered they were chat logs. The person chatting with me was none other than her close best friend, Rina. Reading through the conversation, although it wasn't overly intimate, it was clear their relationship used to be quite good friends at the very least. In the chat history, my messages went from long paragraphs down to fewer and fewer words. Even though it was just a record of messages, Mio could clearly trace the shift in my mindset, from full of hopeful anticipation to complete and utter despair. No wonder she hadn't understood why I could persist for so long before. It turned out Rina had personally given me hope, only to personally crush it. For a moment, a wave of contempt for Rina's behavior welled up inside her, mingled with deep sympathy for me. But the moment Mio lifted her head, she was startled out of her wits. Because she saw me sitting right there, holding a pen, crossing my legs, and staring at her in absolute silence. Right now, she felt beyond awkward. I said calmly, "If there's anything in the phone you don't want to see, just delete it. There's nothing important in there anyway." Hearing me say that, Mio paused in surprise. But on second thought, it was true. Keeping those things around was just a source of heartbreak and sadness. Better to wipe them out completely. She obediently did as told. Afterward, Mio borrowed a book from me and began reading it earnestly. The two of us sat there, studying in quiet concentration. Whenever I ran into a problem I couldn't solve, Mio would patiently lean over and teach me. Every time, I would put on an expression of utter despair. Seeing my exhausted, worn-out look, Mio covered her mouth to hide a giggle. But right at that moment, alongside Mio's laughter, a loud rumbling sound suddenly echoed through the room. Mio's laughter stopped dead in its tracks, freezing on her face. That rumbling noise had come from her own stomach. I looked at Mio with a puzzled expression. "Have you had dinner yet?" A faint blush crept across both of Mio's cheeks as she lowered her head and stammered an answer. Hearing that, I stood up and headed toward the kitchen. Seeing that I was going to cook for her, Mio frantically waved her hands. "It's too late, forget it! You're staying with me, I can't have you starving." I stepped into the kitchen and closed the door. Before long, a delicious aroma drifted out. I walked out carrying a plate of steaming fried rice. "Here, dig in." Mio didn't put up too much more resistance, whispering a quiet, "Thank you." After finishing her meal, Mio rushed over to the kitchen to wash the dishes, all the while thinking, if I could eat meals like this every single day, wouldn't that be wonderful? Catching herself, Mio hurriedly pushed that thought out of her head. She was only staying here temporarily. She would definitely have to leave eventually, and she'd pay a proper rent fee then. She couldn't just freeload here for free. However, the moment Mio stepped out of the kitchen, she froze in her tracks. Because she saw me standing by the cabinet, staring fixedly at the cardboard box. "Did you see?" No, I saw it. I didn't open it up to read, though. I just caught a glimpse of one letter. Good thing to look at like a joke, I suppose. I was planning on throwing all this trash out tomorrow morning. Are you really going to throw them away? What could possibly be more worthless than returned love letters and gifts? After that, I sealed the cardboard box with packing tape, took it out to the doorway, and placed it right next to the trash meant for tomorrow morning's collection. The time quickly approached 12:30 in the middle of the night. The bedroom was pitch black, with a thick duvet acting as a barrier down the middle. Mio was tightly wrapped up in her side of the bed. They hadn't discussed who would actually sleep in the bedroom tonight. This was the second time she had shared a bed with a boy from her class. If the rest of her classmates ever found out, how on earth was she supposed to explain this? Her family had suffered a massive catastrophic blow. At the time, she had felt so devastated she wanted nothing more than to die. She had walked and cried the whole way, completely ignoring the gazes and whispers of strangers. She had to admit, if it hadn't for Ren, she honestly had no idea where she'd be right now. You could even say he saved her life. Hearing Mio call out to him, I softly murmured a reply. The next second, I heard Mio's gentle, faint voice. Tonight, Mio fell asleep much more soundly than she had the night before. When she stepped out of the bedroom the following morning, I had already prepared lunch, except this time there were 2 bento boxes sitting on the table. I pushed the smaller one toward Mio. Mio blinked in surprise as she looked at the lunchbox in front of her. "I prepared this for you. Won't this help you save a bit of money on food? If you don't want—" "No, I do!" Mio hurriedly cupped her hands protectively over her bento box, as if terrified I might snatch it back. "Oh, right. I also packed some fruit and yogurt." I casually slid a second small plastic container over to her. Mio's eyes lit up as she looked at the food, feeling as though she had been transported back to the days when her mother used to pack her lunches in elementary school. That sense of warmth, something she thought she'd lost forever, she had actually managed to find again right here with me. The look of utter, satisfied bliss in Mio's eyes as she watched me was unmistakable. Seeing her reaction only solidified my suspicion that deep down inside, she was still just a child. After washing up and eating breakfast, the 2 of us headed out together. As for the cardboard box, loaded with all my painful memories, I tossed it straight into the trash without a second thought, not even sparing it one last glance. We kept a polite distance from each other along the way. When we reached the school gates, Mio took a deep breath to steady her racing heart. Right then, she heard a voice and turned her head. She spotted several classmates right behind her. Mio raised a hand and greeted them softly. "Ah, long time no see. It really is the class rep. We've missed you to death. Why did you suddenly stop coming to school?" Several of them rushed over, crowding around Mio. I didn't pay any mind to it and continued walking straight ahead. Just at that moment, Mio noticed a girl stepping up close to me as I walked in front. The girl casually tossed a piece of chewing gum toward me. I caught it out of sheer habit and popped it straight into my mouth. Top-tier stuff as always. "Put it on my tab. You're treating me to an internet cafe session later." Mio watched the interaction unfold. Even she hadn't managed to get that close to me. It was the first time she'd ever seen me chat so smoothly and naturally with anyone. Was that my desk mate, Toko? Yao-chan, you're finally here. I was so worried about you. The moment Rina caught sight of Mio, she sprinted over and threw her arms around her. Mio replied to her with words, but her gaze kept drifting back over toward our side. Most of the class had swarmed around Mio by now, leaving only me and Toko sitting quietly at our desks. Mio watched as Toko and I kept chatting back and forth about something. Why do they have so many things to talk about? When she was staying at my house, she never talked to me this much. The teacher wants you to come to the office for a minute. Okay. Mio stood up, but kept her eyes glued to my direction the entire way out the door. It's completely normal for me to talk to my desk mate. Why is she feeling so off about it? Could it be because I've never talked to her that much? Mio's mind kept spinning with wild thoughts. Inside the office, the teacher took Mio's hand and began gently comforting and counseling her. Mio knew deep down that she had to look forward. No matter how much she grieved, it wouldn't change what happened. When Mio returned to the classroom, the students immediately swarmed her again with expressions of concern. I glanced over at the tight cluster of people surrounding Mio and felt zero surprise. Thank goodness my desk was far away, otherwise all that noise would drive me insane. The morning hours flew by quickly. When lunchtime rolled around, Mio, who had been looking forward to it since morning, remembered this was the meal I had personally made for her. She pulled the bento box out of her desk and opened it. Just looking at it felt like an instant appetizer. "Hey, Yao-chan, how come you brought a bento today?" Rina asked, looking surprised as she spotted the box on Mio's desk. In her memory, the only person in the entire class who brought their own lunch was Ren. I just suddenly felt like it on a whim. "Let me have a bite! Did your mom make this?" Rina asked with a smile, eyeing Mio's lunch. "No, really?" Rina picked up her chopsticks, picked off a tiny piece, and popped it into her mouth. A moment later, her delicate eyebrows twitched slightly. "Oh, it's nothing, but it's really good. You're so talented." A wave of panic flickered through Mio's heart. She hadn't expected Rina to find the flavor familiar. Could she have eaten things I've made before? It seems they used to be really close friends. Thank goodness she didn't figure it out, or that would have been mortifying. Rina sat back down at her own desk, then turned her head to glance over at me. Seeing me eating my own lunch as well, she couldn't help frowning, as if mulling over some puzzle. Mio finished every last bite clean, polished off her fruit, and drank her yogurt. Finally, she rested her head contentedly on her desk, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. For some reason, it felt as though she had returned to her childhood. Back in elementary school, she used to bring her own bento every day too. Back when her mother would prepare them, every single tears welled up in Mio's eyes, slipped down her cheeks, and dripped right onto the desk. She quickly wiped them away to keep anyone from noticing. Summer afternoons were sweltering and stuffy, leaving the students drowsy and half asleep. By the time afternoon arrived, they finally had a physical education class, a rare treat nowadays, occurring at most once a week. Everyone poured out onto the school grounds and began running around wildly. As for me, I sat down in a shady spot with a book. I wanted to catch some fresh air outside, but I also wanted to squeeze in every spare minute to study. Hey, look, Ren is actually reading over there. It doesn't look like he's just putting on a show. He's genuinely studying hard. Takanori pointed at me in the shade, whispering to Rina and Mio beside her. Mio nodded lightly. She was the only one who truly knew how hard I worked. Seeing how seriously I studied even after getting home, she could tell how determined I was. Rina, however, didn't seem interested. She grabbed Mio and Takanori by the arms. "Hey, let's go watch the guys play basketball!" Mio let herself be dragged away by Rina, though somewhat reluctantly. Compared to watching those guys play basketball, she actually wanted to go sit by me and read. But doing that would look way too obvious. People would definitely start gossiping. She didn't care much about herself, but she was worried it would cause trouble for me. The energy over by the basketball court was high and boisterous. Over on my side, it was peaceful and quiet. Standing right in front of me was Toko, wearing an oversized t-shirt and athletic shorts, her long, fair, slender legs completely exposed to the air. I tossed the basketball to her, looking slightly puzzled. "Play around with me," Toko said, bouncing the ball twice with a crooked, smiling smile at the corners of her eyes. I gave a casual wave toward the court. Go play with those guys over there. They're no fun. Challenging you is where it's at. What's the matter, chickening out?" Hearing that, I snapped my book shut and stood up. "Don't go crying and running home like you used to when we were kids if you lose." "Ha! You'll have to actually beat me first before saying that." Toko and I walked over to a separate basketball court. The guys playing on that court suddenly froze, their eyes going wide as saucers. Hey, look, who's that over there? Those legs are blindingly white." "What legs?" The guys on the court instantly went wild, hunting around frantically. When they spotted Toko standing not far away, their eyes bulged just as wide. "Holy crap, that's Toko. Damn, Toko's packing heat? Bro, I've ascended." The three girls watching from a distance found it strange. Why had all the guys suddenly stopped playing and started staring in the exact same direction? But when their own gazes followed, the shock on their faces was no less than the boys'. "Ren?" A flutter went through Mio's chest as she looked at me. It felt unexpected, yet entirely within reason. Rena, on the other hand, had her brows knitted tightly together. She felt an inexplicable surge of annoyance in her chest, like someone had just snatched away something that belonged to her. She bit her lip, a cold glint flashing deep within her eyes. "Come on, let's go check it out." Before Toko and I even started playing, we noticed the entire court had been surrounded by a crowd. The guys who had been playing basketball just a second ago had completely quit their game and wandered over to check out the legs. Did Ren always have a body like that? Takanori and the other two girls kept their focus entirely on me, taking in my build wrapped in a short-sleeved shirt. Rena stared in utter disbelief. How had she never noticed I had such a great physique before? After all, she spent every night seeing me sleep in pajamas. "Still playing?" I asked Toko, feeling a bit awkward with so many eyes fixed on us. "Since when did you start caring about what other people think?" Fair point. Our one-on-one match was intensely thrilling. Both our defense and offense were top tier, leaving everyone watching completely dumbfounded. Every time I scored a point, Mio would happily clap along, completely absorbed in the game, a completely different vibe from when she watched the other guys play earlier. The score between the two of us was locked in a dead heat. If I wanted to break the deadlock right now, I needed to put a little more distance between myself and Toko. The next second, before Toko could even react, I grabbed the ball, leaped into the air, and smashed a vicious slam dunk toward the backboard. Accompanied by a sharp, cracking sound, spiderweb cracks rapidly spidered across the glass backboard before shattering completely, sending a shower of glass shards raining down onto the ground. I blinked, staring at the scene in front of me with a blank expression. The surrounding crowd let out a massive gasp, every single pair of eyes pinned on me in disbelief. The girls were even more startled. It was the first time any of them had ever witnessed something like that. Toko brushed a stray piece of glass off my shoulder. "That's enough to show off your skills." At that moment, I felt a bit bewildered. I had thought I was immune to outside distractions, but today I actually got sucked into taking a casual game seriously. "How is he so cool? Oh my God, when he jumped just now, I swear I saw his abs." Takanori shook Rena's arm excitedly, jumping up and down like a little fangirl. Rena still hadn't recovered from the shock, her pupils twitching as she stared fixedly at me. She had thought she understood me completely. Her previous impression of me was that I was boring to talk to, had low emotional intelligence, got bad grades, and was just a gloomy, dull guy. But looking at me right now, I actually looked kind of cool. Mio noticed that quite a few of the surrounding girls were looking at me with undisguised adoration in their eyes. For some reason, a strange feeling bubbled up inside her. It felt like I went ahead to take responsibility and apologize to the faculty. Ultimately, the school didn't make me pay for damages. They just gave me a brief verbal reprimand and made me clean up the mess. Still, legends about me started spreading through the school like wildfire, and the boys in our class were green with envy. But I didn't think this was a good thing at all. After standing out like that, it felt like people were staring at me way more, and looking at me differently too. Especially the girls, who kept glaring at my chest and stomach like they wanted to devour me, giving me the creeps. The day flew by, and school dismissal time arrived once again. I had a lingering hunch that I was going to be ambushed the second I walked out. Whether it was going to be an ambush by guys or girls, I had no clue. Seeing me pack up and bolt so fast, Mio panicked, speeding up her own packing to chase after me. "Hey, Yao-chan, wait up!" Rena called out. noticing how frantic Mio looked. But Mio had zero time to wait for Rina. Besides, if she walked home with Rina, her secret about staying at my place would be way too easy to expose. I can't, I've got something to do after school. Something to do? What could she possibly have to do at this hour? Rina felt a little weird about it. Mio had been acting strange all day long, jumpy, uneasy, and preoccupied with something. But knowing that Mio's family had recently suffered a tragedy, she decided not to pry. It was like she was harboring some unspeakable secret. Mio chased all the way out of the school gates, rushing right up to my side. "Wait for me! Why do you walk so fast?" I looked back at the out-of-breath Mio with mild surprise. "It's not like you don't know where my house is. Just walk at a normal pace." Hearing that, Mio thought about it and realized I had a point. If she chased after me too obviously, she might get spotted and give away her secret. Yet she was always so eager right after school to talk to me openly and properly for the first time. "Are you hurt?" Mio asked softly, remembering all those glass shards raining down on me earlier during gym class, terrified I might have gotten cut. I gave a calm, non-committal reply. "Oh, by the way, I ate all of today's lunch. It was really good." My single-syllable, word-by-word responses left Mio feeling a bit deflated. Does he have that much to talk about with Toko? Is it because Toko is special to him? It was a question she had been mulling over all day, ever since gym class. I hadn't played basketball with the other guys. I just sat there reading by myself. But the moment Toko came over, I immediately started playing with her. Driven by the gnawing doubt in her chest, she finally blurted out, "Don't get mad, okay? Do you like Toko, like, in a romantic boyfriend-girlfriend way? Because I noticed you talk to her so naturally, you guys share a lot of conversations and get really close. But with me, you're a bit..." Mio felt deeply embarrassed asking that, feeling like she sounded like a jealous girlfriend. My answer came back with absolute, unhesitating decisiveness, without even a fraction of a second's delay. So decisive that Mio found it hard to believe I hadn't even considered it for a split second. "You guys get along so well. She has great grades and she's pretty. She's easily just as good as Rina. If I did that, my dad would beat me to death because doing so would cross ethical boundaries. Dating your own cousin." Mio immediately froze in her tracks, her eyes wide with shock and a look of sheer terror. "Yeah, her mom is my aunt, my dad's paternal cousin. Toko and I grew up together since we were kids. She changed classes a few days after the start of our freshman year. Don't you remember? She's a transfer student who came in late. Because her mom was worried her personality would make it hard for her to make friends or talk to people, she asked the teacher to seat us together as deskmates." My explanation gave Mio an instant epiphany. No wonder we looked so close. It turns out we've been playmates since childhood. She even thought our interactions were pretty restrained, all things considered. It was probably just due to our personalities. Come to think of it, since we were already that close and well-matched, barring any genuine mutual aversion, the only reason nothing was going on was because we were family. Mio let out a visible sigh of relief, her tone lightening up instantly. "So now you know what the deal is. Imagine someone shouting out in public that you're dating your cousin. I'm showing restraint by not blowing my top. I thought you looked ready to murder someone. It was pretty scary. People like that aren't worth getting mad over. If you get mad, you should just smack them straight across the face." Mio raised a hand to cover her mouth and let out a soft laugh. I turned my head to look at her. "What are you laughing at?" "I just feel like I've gotten to know you a bit better, and you're talking to me a lot more now." Afterward, Mio and I walked into the house together. For some reason, Mio felt a lingering sense of warmth and belonging here, even though she had only been staying at my place for 2 days. Yet it felt like she had lived here forever. Perhaps the way I treated her reminded her of what home used to feel like. Meanwhile, I headed straight to the kitchen to start making dinner. Mio felt incredibly lucky. She truly loved my cooking, and it always matched her tastes perfectly. She set to work tidying up the apartment, and even though the place was already spotless, she always managed to find chores to keep herself busy. The two of them ate together in silence. Although Mio tried to spark a conversation and chat with me, I had a habit of eating quickly and quietly, following the old saying that one should not speak while eating or sleeping. Feeling a bit embarrassed, she didn't dare to disturb me any further. After finishing, she took the initiative to clean the table and wash the dishes. Meanwhile, I took off my outer jacket, suddenly remembering something, and asked Mio in the kitchen, Are you going to take a bath? A bath? Mio poked her head out, a faint blush spreading across her cheeks. No, I'm fine. She still wasn't entirely comfortable taking a bath at my place. In the past, she always took care of that outside. She wouldn't even dare do it when I wasn't home, let alone when I was. All right, feel free to use the bathroom. With that reminder, I closed my door to get ready for my own bath. Mio replied in a tiny voice, her delicate earlobes burning red. After finishing her chores, it wasn't long before she heard the sound of rushing water coming from the bathroom. Remembering that I was currently bathing right then and there, her mind involuntarily drifted to my physique. What would a V-shaped, broad-shouldered build look like in the bath? For a moment, some rather vivid imagery started flickering at the edge of her imagination. No way! Mio hurriedly shook her head, trying to shake off those blushing thoughts. She scolded herself internally for thinking about such things. Though she forced herself to concentrate, by the time she finally snapped back to reality, the sound of the water had already stopped. She immediately put on the act of studying diligently, gripping her textbook tightly and staring at it with intense focus. A moment later, I stepped out of the bathroom wearing my pajamas. Because I hadn't dried off completely, the fabric clung tightly to my torso, making my well-defined abs exceptionally striking. Even though Mio tried her hardest to focus, her eyes still kept drifting uncontrollably toward my gulp. Mio's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. What was she doing? Did she just swallow her own saliva? Was she, Mio, really that kind of person? From childhood all the way to the present, she had never been in a relationship, let alone felt a romantic crush on any guy. She had always considered herself a stereotypical bookworm who only knew how to study, completely different from those kids recklessly chasing after romance during their youth. Why was her heart suddenly acting up like this? Unaware of Mio's inner turmoil, I simply went about drying my hair. Mio slapped her burning cheeks firmly, forcing herself to calm down and plunge headfirst back into the ocean of knowledge. Right at that moment, my phone sitting on the desk chimed. Instinctively following the sound, she glanced over and caught a glimpse of a new notification on the screen. Mio's heart gave an involuntary jolt because she saw the sender's display name was Rina. Why is she suddenly messaging him? Although this sparked a fierce wave of curiosity in Mio, she didn't dare to snoop or read the message contents. Seeing me walk back and sit down at my desk to study, Mio awkwardly stammered out, your phone just rang. But when I looked at the message on the screen, I merely frowned slightly, turned off the screen without replying, and set the phone aside. Mio had been watching my expression the whole time. My reaction only amplified her curiosity tenfold. What kind of message could Rina have sent? Was she confessing her feelings in return? That seemed pretty unlikely. She had already read the chat logs on the old phone, and Rina's attitude at school today made it obvious she wanted nothing to do with me. Meanwhile, Rina was lying in bed staring at her phone, looking at the message she had just sent me. "What are you up to?" Though it was only 3 short words, it was the result of her agonizing over it for a long time before finally hitting send. In the past, I would have replied almost instantly. Even if there was a delay, I would have rushed to explain why. But now, half an hour had passed, and there was still zero response from me. How she wished messaging apps had a read receipt feature so she could know whether I had even seen it or not. Rina slowly typed out a few more words with her thumb. "Why are you ignoring me?" Yet when it came time to hit send, her finger froze above the screen, caught in an internal tug-of-war. A moment later, she turned off her phone, tossed it aside, and pulled her arm over her eyes. Seriously, why couldn't things just stay the way they used to be? Why did everything have to change? Late at night, the two of us returned to the bedroom to sleep. The first time was awkward, the second time was familiar, and by the third time, Mio had nothing left to worry about. It even felt quite natural. After all, what happened over the past 2 days had already happened, and she had a decent grasp of what kind of person I was. As for the rest of our classmates, this whole situation had given them quite a shock. Their perception of me was probably starting to shift completely. But the most shocking thing for Mio was still finding out that Toko and I were related. Come to think of it, Toko really had transferred into their class a few days after the start of freshman year. And right after that, she became my desk mate, staying by my side ever since, without a single seat change. To Mio, Toko's impression was pretty much identical to mine. Both of us were quiet, terrible at socializing and friendless. She had honestly never seen Toko hanging out with anyone else either. Occasionally, Toko would just sit quietly at her desk, engrossed in who knows what. "Does she really have no friends?" Mio suddenly asked in a soft voice, though it rang crystal clear in the silent bedroom. "Yeah," I replied. "Do you ever talk to her?" "I do, but I'd advise you not to try making friends with her." Mio froze in genuine surprise, wondering if she had misheard. After a long silence, I slowly added, "If you spend too much time around her, I'm afraid your self-confidence will get crushed." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just don't get involved with her, that's all. She doesn't need any friends anyway." I rolled over onto my side, shifting topics as if biting back something else I wanted to say. Mio's curiosity had already been piqued earlier by Rina's message, and now I was deliberately keeping her hanging about Toko. She simply couldn't take it anymore. If she was left in the dark about this, she'd probably never fall asleep tonight. Propping herself up on her elbow, Mio looked across the barrier at me and said earnestly, "Just tell me. Don't worry, I promise I'll still be friends with her." Seeing how determined Mio was, I sat up, turned on the light, walked over to the computer desk, and started rummaging through some things. Mio watched me, sitting on the edge of the bed with a puzzled expression. After a moment, I handed a photograph over to Mio. Taking it, Mio saw a little girl in the picture who looked to be only 7 or 8 years old, flashing a brilliant smile. What stood out most of all was that she was holding a thick stack of award certificates in her left hand and a trophy in her right. Is this Toko? The little girl in the photo looked vastly different from the Toko of today. Setting aside the short hair versus long hair, her expression was bubbly and full of smiles, whereas the present-day Toko was aloof and cold. Yep, really, she was the textbook definition of a prodigy kid. She excelled at every instrument, art, and sport, winning first place in any competition effortlessly, and her grades had always been at the top of the school since she was little. Your grades are in the top 5 of the year level, right? She's just coasting right now without putting in real effort. If she spent 2.5 months playing fewer video games, she'd definitely surpass you. Really? Mio's jaw dropped in absolute astonishment. She knew Toko was talented, but she had no idea it went to this extreme. Growing up, I couldn't beat her at a single thing, so she never really looked at me like an older cousin when we were kids. For a long time, I actually couldn't stand her. Sitting in the chair, a deep, nostalgic look crossed my eyes as I recalled the past. The only way I could assert any dominance over her was through the natural physical strength gap between boys and girls. I remember once when we were kids, we played basketball, and it was the first time I managed to beat her at something. Naturally, I smiled. In fact, it was the happiest I had ever smiled. After that defeat hit her hard, she started practicing her physical endurance like crazy every single day, purely determined to beat me at sports. From then on, I finally recovered a shred of confidence, and she started treating me as her ultimate rival, while her personality gradually grew calmer and more composed. With that, I tossed her another photo. This one appeared to be from when Toko and I were in middle school. It captured my birthday, where I had my eyes closed making a wish in front of the cake. Meanwhile, Toko was wearing my birthday hat and caught red-handed in the middle of sneaking a taste of the frosting. I feel like your bond is probably stronger than most ordinary siblings. Mio handed the photo back to me, a trace of envy gleaming in her eyes. Growing up without that kind of close friend or family member, she finally understood why neither of us had many friends. Perhaps having each other was already enough. I suppose so. At least she and I have never gotten into a real fight. Looking over at Mio, I continued. So now you understand, right? Hanging out with her can be pretty exhausting. Besides, you really don't need to force yourself to be friends with her. Mio shook her head gently and lifted the corners of her mouth in a small smile. Now I want to be friends with her even more. Learning from someone excellent is the only way I can improve. The next morning, Rena walked out of her house and headed toward school, though she looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept a wink. She had waited for my reply until very late last night. After a couple of hours passed, she became convinced that I had seen her message and was deliberately giving her the silent treatment. Initially, she was furious, feeling like she had finally shaken me off, but now these lingering thoughts had kept Rena up all night, so she decided to ask Mio and Takanori for their opinions once she got to school. Yawning as she walked, Rena felt like the school was still miles away. Right now, she desperately wished I would suddenly appear behind her, call out to make her walk with me, and chat with her like old times when it was just the two of us. But of course, that was just a daydream. Suddenly, Rina's eyes widened in disbelief as she watched someone stride right past her. "Ren," she blurted out instinctively. Hearing the call, I turned my head to glance at her briefly, then looked past her and continued walking away. Walking right beside her was another person. "Morning, Rina. Yao-chan? How come I never saw her walking to school with you before?" A flash of suspicion crossed Rina's eyes. Did she hear me just now, too? "Ah, I moved recently," Mio stammered in response. Luckily, she had spotted Rina walking ahead a moment ago and had intentionally slowed her pace to keep some distance between us. "You look like you have zero energy. Did you not sleep well?" Mio asked, noticing Rina looked identical to how Mio herself had looked a few days prior. Giving a listless, drooping reply, Rina sighed. "Yeah, didn't sleep well." Mio remembered Rina messaging me last night and getting left on read. Could she be sleepless because of that? Has Rina changed her mind again? Does she want to get back together with Ren? Upon reaching the classroom, the two girls found the atmosphere unusually lively. Takanori, who had already arrived, pointed over toward our desks. Ren and Toko are insanely popular right now. Mio and Rina cast confused glances toward our corner of the room. They saw students constantly crowding around our desks, chatting away, and handing over gifts and snacks. "Toko, I bought these snacks for you this morning." "Toko, are you playing basketball this weekend? We're short a person. Come join us." "Ren, we're going to karaoke this weekend. You coming?" "Ren, can you teach me how to play basketball?" The stream of boys and girls surrounding us never seemed to end, but for the two of us, it felt like an apocalyptic disaster. Our faces had been plastered with deep irritation the moment we stepped into the room. Suddenly, I slammed my palm down hard onto the desk, the loud echo instantly silencing the entire classroom. Facing our dark, gloomy expressions, everyone felt a chill crawl down their spine and scrambled backward in a hurry. After all, neither of us was anyone to mess with lightly. Only then did the furrowed brows on our faces relax. Seeing this, Takanori couldn't help sighing. They really aren't easy to approach. No wonder they don't have many friends. "I think they just choose not to. I don't think they're actually hard to get along with. They just hate noise and aren't very familiar with the other students yet." Mio subconsciously spoke up to defend us. By now, she knew the truth about Toko and me. Rina kept her eyes locked on me, her mind swirling with a million things she wanted to say, yet finding zero opportunity to do so. After all, I used to be the guy who liked her. Couldn't she at least be the most special exception? To think that in just 3 short days, the tables had completely turned from me revolving around her to countless people revolving around me, while she couldn't even catch my attention anymore. She had originally intended to ask Mio and Takanori for advice at school, but seeing how things stood, she realized she'd have to talk to me directly. "By the way, Ren was seriously cool yesterday. What if I confess to him?" Takanori looked at the two of them with eager expectation. Unfortunately, both girls shook their heads almost simultaneously. That unanimous response immediately made Takanori's face fall flat. Meanwhile, Toko and I were in a terrible mood. Yesterday, our desks were an isolated sanctuary of peace, so why had it turned into a chaotic battlefield today? So annoying. Toko muttered under her breath, spitting out her chewing gum into a wrapper. Frowning, I glanced at Toko. "It's just one basketball game. Is it really that big a deal?" "They probably just like chasing novelty since they don't know us well. Then they should go bother you instead. Why bother me? Don't they know me well enough yet?" As I said that, my gaze drifted toward the root cause of my 2 years of mockery and ridicule, Rina. To my surprise, she was staring right at me, and our eyes happened to lock directly. The moment our gazes met, Rina felt her heart skip a beat, a sudden jolt of nervousness hitting her chest. She quickly whipped her head away, her face flushing cherry red. Pressing a hand against her chest, she muttered to herself, "What is going on with me?" Right after the bell rang for the break, Rina grabbed Mio's arm. "Come with me to the restroom." Even as the two of them walked down the hallway toward the restroom, Mio could tell from Rina's demeanor that this wasn't just a routine bathroom trip. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dragged her out alone instead of moving with their usual trio. "What's up? Just spit it out." Mio said, easily reading right through Rina's intentions. Rina glanced left and right down the corridor. Making sure no acquaintances were nearby, she leaned close to Mio's ear and whispered, "Look, I'm telling you this, but don't repeat it to anyone else. You know how I always said I didn't like Ren? How come the more I look at him lately, the more appealing he seems to me? Please don't tell Takanori. She'd definitely laugh her head off at me." Recalling Rina's message last night and her lifeless state this morning, Mio realized it was all because her feelings toward me had genuinely shifted. "You've fallen for him, haven't you? I don't even know myself. What if I say it's possible?" Rina looked at Mio with a trace of unease in her eyes. Catching feelings for someone wasn't a huge deal on its own, but falling for a guy you had rejected and spurned for 2 whole years was downright comical. Even she found herself ridiculous for it. The guy had chased her so sincerely and persistently for 2 solid years, and the moment he showed a tiny flash of competence yesterday, her heart immediately flipped. "Well, I wouldn't laugh at you, but I think you might be having these thoughts a bit too late. Ren is really popular right now, and besides, hasn't it been several days since he last tried to confess to you? He doesn't like me anymore?" Rina's internal panic reached its absolute peak. On the first day I stopped pestering her, she had felt a sense of relief. By the 3rd day, she was already feeling uneasy. Had she really turned out to be this weak under pressure? What if this was all just some calculated, hard-to-get tactic of his? Wouldn't that mean I fell right into his trap without a fight? Mio didn't dare reveal the actual truth. After all, she had witnessed firsthand last night when Rina's message came through, and how I couldn't care less, choosing to leave it on read. But if she spoke too bluntly right now, it would definitely crush Rina's heart. "You could just talk to Ren directly, you know? What if there's still a chance?" Even though Mio knew Rina had practically 0 chance left, she offered the suggestion anyway, hoping Rina would face reality through direct confrontation. "Would I just get rejected flat out? Talk to Ren directly? Can you help me? Why don't you go talk to him yourself?" Rina replied with an awkward grimace. The thought of going up to me on her own meant doing it right out in the open in front of everyone, where she'd undoubtedly end up as the laughingstock of the crowd, and if she got rejected to her face in front of everybody, it would be infinitely more humiliating. "I can't guarantee he'll say yes." After hesitating for a moment, Mio decided to help out just a little bit, considering Rina was still her good friend after all. "Awesome, thanks," Rina beamed, giving Mio a happy hug before turning back toward the classroom. Mio let out a helpless sigh, her mood turning complicated. As Rina's friend, shouldn't she be rooting for her to succeed? In fact, she caught herself silently praying in her heart that I wouldn't be swayed by Rina. When Mio walked back into the classroom, since there was still a little time before the bell, Rina, sitting at her desk, started frantically shooting eye signals at Mio, urging her to go talk to me on her behalf. Seeing that there was no one around me, Mio continued walking toward my desk. As class representative and someone well-liked by everyone, she could talk to anyone in the class without raising any eyebrows, except for one person. Hiroto sat at his desk, and when he saw Mio walking over toward me, his heart suddenly tightened. He felt like he had to do something. Mio arrived at my side and murmured softly, "Ren." Hearing that, I looked up at Mio and gave a cold, flat response. After all, everyone in this class had spent 2 years mocking me. When I actually wanted to get along with them in the past, they treated me like a joke. Now that I wanted some peace and quiet to study and catch up on my schoolwork, this bunch kept swarming over. Even now, I was still feeling irritated. The only reason I didn't just ignore her was because it was Mio. If it had been anyone else, I wouldn't have given them the time of day. "There's a math problem I don't understand. Could you help me with it?" Just then, Hiroto suddenly rushed over holding his workbook, cutting her off mid-sentence. Mio's thoughts were completely scrambled out of nowhere. She looked at Hiroto, in a daze. Normally, because she was easy to talk to and had great grades, plenty of people came to her with questions. But there's a time and a place for everything. She was in the middle of talking to someone else, and about a terribly sensitive topic at that. How was she supposed to bring it up now? Oh, you're talking to Ren? No rush, no rush." Hiroto offered a clumsy cover-up, pretending not to interrupt our conversation, yet he didn't take a single step backward. He intended to stand right there and listen to whatever Mio had to say so he could finally have some peace of mind. "Could you?" Mio was caught in a painful dilemma. completely unable to finish her sentence. If Hiroto overheard and spread it around, not only would Rina be mortified, but Ren would also be put on the spot. She didn't want to be treated as a joke anymore, nor did she want to become the class gossip topic. Yet she felt too awkward to tell Hiroto to clear out, as that would make it look like she was discussing some secret scandalous affair. I raised my eyes, looking at a visibly distressed Mio, and then at an unyielding Hiroto. The next second, a hand reached out and grabbed Mio firmly by the wrist. Under Hiroto's dumbfounded stare, I pulled Mio straight out of the classroom. At that moment, Mio's mind went completely blank. Being grabbed by me felt exactly like that day she was dragged back to my house in the heavy rain. Rina had been secretly watching the situation unfold, and seeing this scene left her eyes filled with sheer disbelief. Hiroto was completely floored, his eyebrow twitching wildly. I had actually dragged Mio away right in front of his face. I led Mio down to the stairwell where nobody ever passed by. Releasing her wrist, I looked down at her and said, "All right, go ahead." "Aren't you worried people will spread rumors? They're going to misunderstand." Mio lowered her head and whispered. Her heart pounded wildly, just thinking about how I had pulled her out of the classroom. I closed my eyes for a second and spoke slowly. "I'll explain things to them when we get back." Mio waved her hands frantically. "No, I'm even less worried." She knew what her current standing was. She was completely on her own now. If she wasn't even afraid of social ruin, why would she care about petty gossip? With class starting up again soon. "Actually, I'm just a messenger. She wants to talk to you privately and asked to meet you at right here." I shook my head and rejected the offer outright. Without even a moment of hesitation, Mio had already anticipated this outcome. It was the most likely scenario. "Are you really not going to talk to her? Who knows? Maybe she'll agree to go out with you. If that's the case, I definitely can't talk to her. I chased her for 2 years and she turned me down every time. Now that I've stopped chasing her, she wants to talk just because she changed her mind? Am I really that cheap? I suppose that's true." With that, the two of us headed back to the classroom. However, the moment I sat down, Toko tapped her pen against the desk and asked, "When did you get so close to the class representative?" I looked at her in confusion. "How did you figure that out? If you aren't close, would you grab someone by the wrist and drag them off? Aren't you afraid she'd slap you?" Hearing that, I waved a hand dismissively. "You're overthinking it. I know she's a good person. If it were anyone else, I wouldn't dare." "Fine, whatever." Toko nodded, half convinced. As for what Mio and I had just been talking about, she didn't ask and didn't want to know, although she knew she could ask if she wanted to. While some people didn't care to know, others were dying of curiosity. Hiroto was sitting at his desk like needles were poking him. He felt like ants were crawling all over his skin. He wanted nothing more than to know what Mio and I had talked about, but he hadn't been able to follow us out earlier because it would have made his intentions far too obvious and drawn everyone's annoyance. Meanwhile, seeing me drag Mio away by the wrist had somehow made everyone accept our closeness naturally. Rina was the other witness. Even though she was shocked by my behavior just now, what those two had gone outside to discuss was her top priority. She was now desperately hoping Mio would bring her some good news. As soon as the class ended, Rina hurried over to Mio's side. "Yao-chan." Her voice and eyes overflowed with expectation. But seeing the troubled look on Mio's face, her heart dropped with a heavy thud. "Rina, you should just give up on Ren. Didn't you say so yourself? He rejected you." Rina lowered her gaze in gloom, feeling her eye sockets tighten as a wave of tears threatened to spill. She didn't feel wronged. She only felt like she was reaping what she sowed. After all, it wasn't a missed opportunity. It was something sitting right in front of her for 2 whole years that she had willfully ignored. Fate seemed to be playing a cruel trick on her. For 2 full years she hadn't liked me. Yet just days after I stopped liking her, she found herself starting to develop feelings. Not knowing how to comfort her, Mio could only give a gentle shake of her head and say, "It's okay. You'll meet plenty of people who like you in college. We're in our final year of high school now. Even if you two somehow got together, given your grades, you probably wouldn't even end up at the same university. Long-distance relationships are even more painful." At a complete loss for what to do, Rina could only passively listen to Mio's consolations. What else could she do anyway? Beg and plead shamelessly for me to take her back? Just moments ago, she had still been wondering what to say to me during lunch. But now, it was clear I had zero interest in talking to her. Hearing the commotion, Takanori walked over to join the two of them. Noticing Rina's awful complexion, Takanori looked puzzled, but Mio gently tugged her hand, signaling her to drop it and not ask. Takanori obediently kept her mouth shut, though since it involved Rina, it probably had something to do with Ren. Lunchtime arrived, and Mio happily unpacked the bento box I had prepared for her. In the past, she rarely looked forward to lunch because she ate very little. Mealtimes almost felt like a waste of time to her. Nowadays, lunch had become the part of the day she anticipated most. As the lunch break neared its end, the homeroom teacher walked up to the podium and announced, "I have 2 announcements to make." The teacher's voice instantly snapped the resting students to attention. First, our monthly mock exams are coming up next Tuesday. Everyone, study hard this week. Second, at the end of the month, we'll be holding the school sports festival. This will be your very last sports festival in high school. A wave of excitement rippled through the classroom at the mention of the sports festival. After all, the pressure of academic life was immense, and a 2-day sports festival was undoubtedly the ultimate opportunity to unwind and blow off some steam. The event list is printed on these sign-up sheets. Participation is voluntary. As for the opening ceremony performance, you guys can discuss it amongst yourselves this time. I'll leave these 2 matters in your hands. The teacher handed the stack of forms to Mio, sitting in the front row. A crowd swarmed forward instantly, buzzing with excitement to check the details. Naturally, Hiroto was right in the middle of it. With everyone talking over each other all at once, the classroom grew so noisy that Mio's ears began to ring. Frustrated by the chaos, Mio quickly called for quiet. The sports festival is at the end of the month. We have plenty of time for that. The top priority right now is next Tuesday's mock exam. Sign up for events if you want to, but the rest of you need to focus on reviewings. We'll discuss the opening ceremony performance after the exams are over. Nearby, Hiroto chimed in quickly to back her up. Yeah, listen to the class rap! Everyone back to your seats. If you want to sign up for events, come see me. Lifting her head with sleep-filled eyes, Toko looked over at me and asked, "What's all that about?" Mock exams next Tuesday, sports festival at the end of the month. Toko let out a yawn. Ugh, can we fake an illness and take a leave of absence for the sports festival? Let's just go hit an internet cafe instead, otherwise this is so boring. I'm stressing out over how I'm going to survive this mock exam. Rubbing both temples, I could already feel a headache coming on. Scoring in the top 200 of the grade year was no joke. The difficulty was real. Raising my rank by 50 spots this time felt like an impossible dream. I had zero confidence. Do you want me to tutor you this weekend? Forget it. Your train of thought is way too advanced for me to follow. Just thinking about how long Mio had to explain problems before I finally understood them was enough. As for Toko, she wasn't cut out for teaching at all. She'd just give you the final answer and tell you to reverse engineer the steps yourself. Fine, then I'll just log into your account tonight and grind out your daily quests for you. I nodded with a helpless sigh. Afterward, I left the school to head home. This time, Mio didn't rush to tag along right away. She knew where I lived anyway. She spent a little time chatting with Rina and Takanori after school before parting ways with them along the street. When she arrived, she found that I was already busy cooking dinner. As the two of them ate together, Mio tried to strike up a conversation. Are you interested in the sports festival? With your athletic skills, you could definitely win a few gold medals. But I shook my head. Not interested. Do you think she would be willing to participate? Mio didn't give up, bringing up Toko. Entering the girls, division events would definitely be a breeze for her. If she doesn't fake an illness to skip school that day, it'll already be a miracle. You actually expect her to sign up for events? I'll make a bet with you. If she participates, I'll participate too. Hearing that, Mio smiled and nodded. Deal. Even though she wasn't sure if she could actually persuade Toko if she somehow managed it with those two powerhouses on board, how could they possibly lose this little competition? After dinner, Mio and I sat at the desk to study. I was racing against the clock now. With Mio helping me, I didn't get stuck anywhere, and my study efficiency skyrocketed. Mio checked the time, glanced at my profile, and hesitated, as if she had something on her mind. After hesitating for a few seconds, she spoke up gently. Can I go take a bath? If you want to take a bath, just go take one. Why are you asking me? Of course, Mio had to ask. She couldn't just treat the place completely like her own home, after all. Mio slowly stood up and headed toward the bathroom, feeling a little nervous. Before long, the sound of running water echoed from the bathroom, despite the door being locked tight. After finishing her bath, she dried her hair inside. Coming out, she saw I was still sitting at the desk studying. Keep going like this, and I'd burn out, for sure. After all, studying wasn't something you could cram all at once. Balancing work and rest was crucial. I noticed you have a computer in your room. But aren't exams coming up? I recalled how previously, the moment I got home, I'd jump straight onto the computer to play games online with Toko. Yet while she still managed to rank in the top 20, I plummeted to over 200th place, and she'd still drag me off to internet cafes on top of that. You can play for a bit, you know. There's no need to study nonstop until you collapse. Why don't you take a break and play for a while? However, the moment she finished those words, I paused my pen in surprise and looked up at Mio. Really? Of course. It'll help you study better afterwards. Well, all right, if you say so. I guess I'll play for just a little bit. With that, I leaped up and dashed into my bedroom. Ever since that trip to the internet cafe with Toko, hearing her talk on and on about the game had left me itching to play. Now that Mio gave me the green light to take a break, having a top 5 students' approval meant there was definitely nothing wrong with it. Mio felt a little bewildered at that moment, never expecting me to listen to her advice so readily. Or perhaps I just really wanted to play games all along. Shortly after, Mio followed me into the bedroom. Seeing that I had already turned on the computer, she sat down on the edge of the bed, only to find she couldn't understand a single thing about the game I booted up. And then it looked like I had opened up a chat window with someone. Next, I placed my headset on the desk, turning the volume all the way up. Can you hear me? Hearing that voice startled Mio slightly because the sound bleeding from the headset belonged to, I can hear you. How come you logged on today? Gotta balance work and rest, right? All right, come help me clear a quest then. Mio watched quietly from the side, sitting so still she didn't dare make a peep for fear of being heard by Toko. But right then, the voice coming through the headset suddenly shifted to another woman's voice. Is that little Ren? Ah, yeah. My voice sounded soft and cautious. This was the first time Mio had ever heard me speak in that tone. It felt like discovering a totally different side of me. Fascinating. I thought I recognized your voice just now. Speaking in soft, gentle tones, the voice sounded almost maternal. Next week. It's a deal then, make sure you show up. Definitely. Listening from the side, a trace of envy involuntarily welled up in Mio's eyes. So this is what having family feels like. Even living alone here. Unlike herself. The moment she recalled what had happened to her recently, a sharp, agonizing pain tore through her chest. Lowering her head, Mio felt a stabbing ache inside, her vision blurring as if a thick mist had clouded her eyes. Sensing that something was off with Mio's state, I wrapped up the chat with my aunt and shut down the game and computer. Mio hurriedly turned her face away, not wanting me to see her looking like this. But thinking about the past still brought tears to her eyes. What else could she do? She was just a girl who had barely turned 18. Looking over at her, I spoke in a soft voice. I think we should talk. The moment Mio opened her mouth, the tears she had been holding back spilled over. With a sour nose, her voice came out muffled and thick. Of course we should talk about what's going on with you. There are a lot of things you haven't explained clearly, right? Why don't you have a place to stay? Though these questions had lingered in the back of my mind, I had been afraid of touching upon Mio's painful scars. Today, however, I felt it was time to let Mio get it out. At least having someone listen would make her feel a little better. Burying her head low, Mio let out quiet sobs as tears streamed down continuously. Guessing that Mio didn't want to speak up, I stood up and walked over to the edge of the bed. Reaching out, I gently placed a hand on Mio's shoulder. You don't have to carry all this sadness alone. You can talk to me whenever you want. At least there will be someone who understands how you feel. Mio lifted her head, teardrops still clinging to the corners of her eyes. But upon meeting my gaze, the heavy sorrow in her heart inexplicably shrank by half. I don't have a place to stay. I don't have a home anymore, and I can't live there either. Whose house is it then? It seemed there was still an unspeakable hidden story behind all this. Handing her some tissue so she could wipe away her tears, I waited until she slowly began to speak. My family is a step family. I was brought along by my mother. My stepfather, he has children of his own too. My father's ex-wife brought his son along and took over the house. But now they're coming back to demand the house be returned to them. I am completely helpless. Hearing this, my eyebrows knitted tightly together. Isn't that just kicking someone when they're down? How can people be so heartless? Didn't she offer you any kind of compensation at all? Mio shook her head, looking utterly desolate and disappointed. I realized my question was completely pointless. If they could stoop to such ruthless opportunism, how could they possibly have a change of heart or a conscience? When my mom remarried my dad, all the relatives were against it. We lost all contact details, and I haven't seen them in years. Besides, even if I did see him, he wouldn't care about me at all. This was simply a bit too much for her to bear. I nodded quietly by her side, feeling like I finally understood the heavy burden in Mio's heart. I genuinely never imagined that Mio was carrying such heavy life pressures and had endured experiences like these. Left with nowhere to go in the pouring rain, to the point where she might not even have survived until the next day. Yet she didn't give up on herself, didn't resort to self-pity, and was still able to attend school normally. I felt she was already strong enough, so strong that it made me look at her in a completely new light and filled me with deep admiration. A firm decision formed in my heart. Since fate had arranged for me to help Mio, and given what an exceptional girl she was, her future shouldn't be cut short by these external factors. I patted Mio's shoulder and said, "You don't need to worry about any of this. I'll take care of your meals and lodging. I'll provide for you. Until you graduate, find a job, and can support yourself. Just focus on your studies and live your life in peace." Hearing this, Mio raised her head, her eyes instantly filling with shock. Her face spelled sheer disbelief, her mouth hanging open in a daze. I simply couldn't bear to watch such a brilliant student get crushed by life's hardships. My family's financial situation is pretty decent, and my monthly allowance is quite generous. If you play games, you can tell from the gear on my account. I'll split my monthly allowance with you 50-50. Mio waved her hands frantically in refusal. "No, no, no! How could I do that? We're just classmates!" She couldn't believe I would actually make such a promise to her. After all, they were merely high school classmates, and for 2 years at school, they had barely been acquainted. Yet right now, I was offering to financially support her. Enough! Stop babbling. You know you can't argue your way out of this with me. My biggest flaw is, Mio knew it was true. She simply couldn't win an argument against me. Besides, she was currently living under someone else's roof, and rule number 1 was to obey the master of the house. Lowering her head, her voice as faint as a mosquito's hum, she asked, "What do you want me to do in return?" I scratched my head in confusion. Well, isn't that what usually happens when a man keeps a woman? If she accepted this, she definitely had to offer something of equal value in return. After all, a free lunch doesn't exist. The moment those words left her mouth, her face flushed red down to the roots of her ears. Keeping someone isn't quite the right word, but I do need you to do something for me. Yay. You say it? Mio's face looked like it was about to drip blood, trembling slightly like a startled fawn. Yet she still forced the words out from her throat. To her, this was a rare, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She had to survive first before she could think about anything else. Things like education, dignity, or even her own body. If it had been anyone else making such an offer, she would have rejected them without a second thought. Yet deep down, she felt completely at ease accepting it from me. I nodded. Well, my family said my ranking in next Tuesday's mock exam needs to rise by at least 50 spots. Your job is to help me successfully boost my grades before the mock exam. Over on her side, Rena jolted awake from a nightmare, sitting up abruptly as she realized she was drenched in cold sweat. It was deep in the night, and the bedroom was dead silent, except for the steady ticking of the clock. Rena panted heavily, struggling to regulate her breathing. Once she calmed down, she immediately reached for her phone by the bedside, only to find not a single new message. Her mind kept replaying the scenes from the dream she had just experienced. Perhaps because she had been thinking about it all before falling asleep, her dream had been entirely about me. In the dream, every detail of how we met and grew to know each other replayed completely. There were also things that had never happened. In the dream, we actually got together, and our relationship grew sweeter day by day. But then someone appeared and disrupted everything between us. That person was Toko. That was why she had jolted awake in a panic, even though she had already decided to give up on me. For some reason, a profound, aching longing for me welled up in Rena's chest, an urge so strong she wanted to see me right this second. Was she still unable to let go? Staring at her phone, which still lacked any reply, Rena thought about her plan to talk to me. Even so, didn't I chase her for 2 years? So what if she turned around and chased me instead? If she became the class laughingstock, so be it. Calmly rationalizing the situation, she concluded that her biggest rival right now was undoubtedly Toko, who sat right beside me as my deskmate. Our relationship was so close that it baffled her, and even our personalities and tempers were strikingly similar. It felt like we could end up together at any second, which meant she urgently needed someone's help. And Mio, who was definitively not a rival in her heart and posed a danger index of 0, naturally became her top choice. Yao-chan. Early the next morning, Mio and I headed out together for school. However, Mio's demeanor today was vastly different from yesterday. It felt as though a mountain of pressure had been lifted off her shoulders, and a soft smile graced her face. Today was Saturday, which meant an early dismissal in the afternoon. These 2 days are crucial, so please help me study hard. Hearing this, Mio turned her head to look at me, nodding firmly with a gentle promise. On past morning commutes, the two of us always maintained a deliberate distance. Mio had done that intentionally, seemingly afraid that Rena would notice and grow suspicious. But this morning, Mio walked right beside me step for step, completely unhurried. I glanced at her sideways with a puzzled look. Aren't you worried people will see us walking to school together? What's wrong with classmates walking to school together? The two of us stepped through the school gates. Up ahead, a familiar figure came into view. The moment she spotted her, Mio's eyes lit up instantly. Is that Toko? That silhouette was definitely Toko. Do you mind if I go talk to her? Receiving my nod of permission, Mio eagerly trotted off after Toko. She hadn't forgotten my bet from yesterday. If she could actually get Toko to participate in the sports festival, since I had dared to make that bet. It proved that no matter how much anyone tried to persuade Toko with sweet words, it normally never worked. Therefore, she decided to deploy a little strategy to reel in both of us powerhouse slackers. Mio hurried up to Toko's side. At that exact moment, Toko was blowing a bubblegum bubble the size of a fist, but Mio's sudden voice startled her. Pop! The bubble burst instantly, sticking right to the corner of her lips. Toko gave a cool, nonchalant response, then pulled out a gum wrapper, spat the gum out into it, and wrapped it up neatly. Just as Mio opened her mouth to speak, Toko suddenly leaned in close to Mio, catching her off guard and making her forget whatever she was about to say. Standing just a single step away, Toko leaned her head forward and sniffed the air around Mio. Then she sniffed her hair, furrowing her brow slightly before. A knowing smile spread across her face. That smile gave Mio a sudden chill down her spine. Forcing a calm expression, she squeezed out a smile and asked, How does it feel living at Ren's place? Ah, it feels. Realizing what she just said, Mio's face instantly drained of color. Her complexion turned pale before flushing a deep, fiery crimson. How on earth did you know I'm staying at Ren's place? I guessed. The scent is way too similar to Ren's. Even the smell in your hair is identical to his. The same brand of men's body wash combined with the exact same shampoo? You two definitely aren't just ordinary friends. So I deduce that you must be crashing at his place right now. Just like that. You just guessed it like that? Well, I apologize if I'm wrong. What's the big deal? I'm not Sherlock Holmes. Isn't it normal to make a wrong deduction sometimes? Though in this case, aren't you admitting I was right? Toko shrugged with a meaningful smile, looking rather pleased with herself. She looked just like a child who had successfully pulled off a prank. Mio clamped her mouth shut instantly, her face cycling through shades of white and red in a brilliant display. It was the first time she had genuinely experienced what it felt like to be completely crushed in the IQ department. If she hung around Toko for too long, her self-confidence really would shatter into pieces. All the carefully prepared talking points Mio had readied in her head were tossed straight out the window. She knew any excuse she offered was useless. Toko would see right through it and probably end up playing psychological circles around her. However, Toko had no intention of letting Mio off the hook just yet. Grabbing Mio firmly by the wrist, she flashed a mischievous grin and whispered, "So why are you living at Ren's house? I suppose you already know what kind of relationship I have with Ren, right?" On the remaining walk before entering the classroom, Mio spilled the details of how she had encountered me and ended up staying at my apartment. She left out what happened the previous night, merely mentioning that she was temporarily lodging at my place. Hearing Mio's tragic backstory, Toko's expression turned solemn as well, completely dropping her teasing demeanor. Toko gently patted Mio's shoulder, lacking the words to offer cliché comforts. In that aspect, she was remarkably similar to me. Once they walked into the classroom, the two girls returned to their respective seats. Meanwhile, I noticed Toko's expression looked a bit off when she sat down. "What's wrong?" Toko shot me a sidelong glance and murmured, figuring out what was going on in just a matter of seconds. I knew this secret couldn't be kept from Toko forever. She'd find out sooner or later. Well, I can't be bothered caring about the teasing. Toko's lips curled upward into a smirk. Well, not that I intended to tease you about it. I heard about what happened with the class representative. Staring at Toko, I waited a moment before speaking slowly. You disapprove, right? You wouldn't have handled it like I did. Your approach has your own distinct style. I approve of you doing it, but I personally wouldn't. Unless what? Unless you're planning on actually dating her down the line. Instead of replying, I turned my head to look in Mio's direction. Coincidentally, Mio turned to look at me at that exact moment. Our eyes locked briefly before she offered a faint, shy smile and quickly looked away. My teeth ground against each other inside my cheek, a deep, contemplative look crossing my eyes, as if I were weighing something heavy. The next second, I spoke up, "So I am me, and you are you. Of course, there's no absolute standard for right and wrong. As long as you do what you believe is right, that's all that matters." Toko leaned back in her chair, nodding in agreement. Then she added with a smirk, "Though I have to admit, I'm actually quite fond of her. She acts so clumsy and adorable. Teasing her is endlessly entertaining." Yeah. To you, everyone looks clumsy. And just for the record, that includes you too. Well noted. Don't mention it next time. Also, use my actual name, or I'm gonna get goosebumps. Such a spoil sport. Toko and I exchanged a glance before she suddenly burst out into a soft laugh. After class, Mio prepared to head to the teacher's office alone to ask a few questions regarding next Tuesday's mock exams. However, as she stepped out of the office, she found someone waiting with lowered head right by the doorway. "Rina, what are you doing here?" "Waiting for you." "Let's walk and talk." The two girls strolled slowly down the corridor, and recalling her firm resolution from the previous night, Rina began, "Yao-chan, I've decided not to give up on Ren. I want to try confessing to him." "Go ahead and try then." Rina hadn't expected Mio to agree and support her so readily. She fully anticipated Mio trying to talk her out of it. "Really? You approve? Do you think I have a chance?" "Well, trying is always better than living with regrets later." "Yeah, you're right." Bolstered by Mio's support, Rina's confidence surged instantly. After all, when you're embarking on something like this without understanding or support from anyone, self-doubt can be crushing. As for that, Mio froze mid-stride. She really didn't want to get dragged into this mess. But seeing Rina's hopeful, expectant eyes, she found herself lacking the heart to refuse. "Still, how can I even help you? Didn't I already try talking to him on your behalf before?" It totally failed. Rina fell into deep thought. Mio wore a distressed expression because she knew that no matter what, I would never give Rina another chance. Yet Rina was her friend. If she repeatedly pestered me on Rina's behalf, what would happen if I grew annoyed with her? On one side was her good friend, and on the other was her. To be honest, up until now, Mio still didn't know what kind of label defined her relationship with me. Were we classmates, friends, or roommates? Rina suddenly looked earnestly at Mio and said, "Yao-chan, can you help me stall Toko? Please?" "Eh? Why stall Toko? I feel like she's my biggest obstacle. If you can just get close to her and distract her attention, that should be easy for you, right?" "Not easy at all." Lunchtime arrived quickly, and I was making my way back from the restroom when I suddenly heard a timid voice calling my name from behind. Turning around to see who it was, I couldn't help frowning. At school, Rina always put on an act of acting like a total stranger to me on the surface. For her to call out my name openly like this in the hallway was practically unprecedented. Right now, she looked like she desperately wanted to say something to me, yet she was radiating awkwardness and hesitation. Fidgeting nervously, she didn't even dare meet my eyes directly. At lunchtime, seeing me leave the classroom separate from Toko, Rina knew this was her golden opportunity. Hence, Mio was currently inside the classroom executing the plan to keep Toko pinned down. Mio was sitting at my desk, glancing nervously at the side profile of Toko next to her with a hesitant expression. Toko put down her pen, raised her head, and asked, "Yes? Toko, do you often play video games with Ren?" Toko blinked in surprise, then nodded. Panic instantly flaring up, Mio scrambled to explain herself, but Toko suddenly leaned her face in close. Fixing her sharp, piercing gaze straight into Mio's panicked eyes, Toko watched as Mio grew even more flustered, her earlobes turning bright red in an instant. A few seconds later, Toko turned her face slightly and chuckled out loud. Mio's expression froze instantly on her face. She felt like her heart was about to skip a beat. At that exact moment, Mio desperately wanted to tell Rina, "You come try stalling Toko yourself. Surviving even a minute here without getting played to death is a miracle." Suddenly, Toko put on an ultra-serious expression, lowered her head, and pitched her voice low as she told Mio, "Ren told me he's interested in someone else. It's someone from our class. Do you want to know who it is? He told me not to tell anyone, though. He'll get mad if I spill." Mio gently bit her lower lip, hesitating for a moment before yielding, I promise I won't tell anyone." Toko thought about it for a second, then nodded. She motioned with her hand, signaling Mio to lean in closer. Mio pressed her ear right against Toko's. Toko whispered into Mio's ear, "I have no idea who he's interested in. I just figured out that you're pretty interested in him, though." At that moment, Mio was slumped flat across my desk, her two red earlobes sticking out bright crimson, while her feet tapped anxiously against the floorboards. Toko didn't stop laughing until tears actually welled up in her eyes. Reaching out, she patted Mio's trembling shoulder and said, "Seriously, I couldn't hold it in." "Ugh." Mio gave a tiny shudder, as if silently protesting Toko's teasing apology. Because right now, she felt way too naive. Toko had completely outplayed her to the point of utter humiliation, making her wish a hole would open up in the floor so she could crawl inside. Toko also figured she might have gone a bit too far, so she softened her tone and comforted her. "Don't be mad. She must be somewhat interested in you, otherwise she wouldn't have let you stay at her place. If you ask me to choose who is the best fit to be with Ren, I'd definitely pick you." Hearing this, Mio slowly raised her head, peeking at Toko from the corner of one eye. "Are you teasing me again?" "I'm being completely serious this time, I swear." Toko's lips curved upward into a subtle smile. That expression made Mio believe her. Somehow, she looked much more trustworthy right now than when she put on a deadpan face. "Fine." Mio sat up straight. After thinking about it for a moment, it finally dawned on her. She had totally been played like a fiddle. She hadn't even been sitting there for 2.5 minutes, yet she felt like her entire life story had been extracted. Why on earth did she admit to having feelings for Ren? And why was she actually happy that Toko supported her? This made her look completely lacking in dignity. "When did you start developing feelings for Ren?" Faced with Toko's question, Mio froze, her mind instantly going blank. When had she even started feeling this way? Was it last night when he said those words and made those promises to her? Or was it when he cooked lunch for her and looked at her with such gentle care? It was the moment he brought her home, cooked a warm meal for a freezing, starving girl, and forcibly made her stay by giving her hot water and medicine. After pondering it for a long time, Mio finally understood. These feelings weren't born out of nowhere in a single unprompted moment. She felt a quiet joy hidden in her chest whenever I rejected Rina. She felt a sense of relief upon learning about my relationship with Toko, and even felt uneasy whenever other female classmates tried to strike up a conversation with me. "Probably the first day I stayed at Ren's house," Mio answered honestly. She didn't feel embarrassed at all, because everything she had right now was given to her by me. "So, are you really resigned to this now?" Mio blinked in a daze, asking, "What do you mean?" Toko pointed the tip of her pen at the empty seat in front of them. "I know what you came over here to do." The moment you came over, Rina walked out. Over the past few days, she's been constantly sneaking glances at Ren, and occasionally at me. Given how her brain works, she probably decided I was her love rival and sent you over here to chat me up, to keep me from suddenly wandering out and bumping into them, ruining her plans. Well, this. Mio's mouth hung slightly open, her mind stuttering so badly she couldn't spit out a single coherent sentence. Toko reached out and stopped her, saying, "You don't need to explain anything to me. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. After all, it has nothing to do with me. I was just teasing you because I crossed a line earlier." However, Toko's single sentence left Mio completely tongue-tied. Her brain completely stopped functioning, and her thoughts became a total mess. Seeing that Mio didn't reply, Toko continued, "I don't understand romance. If you're genuinely fine with how things are, then pretend I said nothing." Mio took a deep breath, biting down hard on her lower lip. Her fists clenched tightly beneath the desk, her fingertips turning white from the pressure as her heart rate steadily climbed. She hadn't wanted to pay any attention to Rina when she was called over earlier, but Rina had rushed straight up, grabbed her sleeve, and forcibly dragged her over to the stairwell. She hadn't dared to violently shake her off for fear of making her trip and fall. Her tone had naturally revealed a trace of irritation, even though that momentary reaction made Rina feel a pang of fear and unfamiliarity. Rina had then remembered the dream from the previous night and decided that backing down now would make things impossible to salvage. "I know about that. I made mistakes and let you down many times before. But right now, nothing I say can ever undo the hurt I caused you. Can we just go back to being good friends?" My words were direct and concise, completely devoid of any superfluous explanations. I felt that any explanation was pointless, so I turned around to walk away. But Rina clearly had no intention of letting go of this rare opportunity. She lunged forward and grabbed my arm again. "What do I have to do for you to forgive me?" Frowning deeply, I shook my arm, but there was simply no way to brush Rina off. Being clung to like this gave me an instant headache, and I couldn't help thinking, why has Rina got to be a girl? Otherwise, I'd resort to some physical force. Right now, all I could do was pray for the next class to start immediately. "So this is where you are." The two of them suddenly heard a familiar voice. Turning around, they saw Toko approaching from down the hall, with Mio trailing closely behind her. Completely ignoring Rina, Toko strode forward, grabbed my arm, and dragged me away on the spot, leaving Rina standing frozen in place with a bewildered expression. Mio walked over and whispered apologetically, "I'm sorry, Rina. I couldn't block Toko. There was nothing I could do." At that moment, I let out a massive sigh of relief and muttered under my breath to Toko, "Thanks." Glancing back over her shoulder, Toko replied flatly, "Don't thank me. I just owed her one." School let out around 4:30 p.m. on Saturday. Worried about getting cornered by anyone else again, I bolted out of the classroom the second the bell rang. Mio packed up her belongings, but seeing Rina's utterly miserable mood, she had no idea how to comfort her. The whole situation seemed to be weighing heavily on Rina. Mio then shifted her gaze toward Toko, who was preparing to leave, and slowly followed after her. Catching up to Toko just outside the school building, she said, "Toko, thanks for earlier today." After struggling with herself for a long time earlier, she had decided to ask Toko for help. Toko understood that Mio wanted to maintain her friendship with Rina while keeping Rina away from me, so she had volunteered to play the bad guy. Besides, since Rina already viewed her as a romantic rival, she might as well let her keep thinking that way, which led directly to what happened at noon. Consider it payback for annoying you earlier. Well, as for the current situation, right now Mio honestly felt like that little prank was no big deal. At the very least, she and Toko could now officially be considered friends. She had already put all those teasing moments completely out of her mind. Suddenly remembering something, Mio asked, Are you busy tomorrow, during our day off? If playing video games at home counts as being busy, then yes. Well, would you like to come over to Ren's place? It's more fun when there are more people around, right? Toko gave Mio a strange, sidelong look. Aren't the two of you supposed to be spending time alone together? Doesn't Ren need to study? I talked to him about work-life balance yesterday, and he actually agreed. Toko nodded in acknowledgement. Oh, right. Mio remembered something else. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the smartphone I had given her to use. Can we add each other? Toko pulled out her phone as well. Making friends with classmates should have been a completely ordinary, effortless thing for Mio, but right now, successfully exchanging contact info with Toko filled her with a genuine sense of joy. Mio and Toko hanging out together? What's going on here? Why isn't she walking home with Rina and the others? Trailing a short distance behind Mio and Toko were two male students. When he saw Mio sit down at my desk earlier today, he had felt something was off, so he quietly followed them out after school. Even though he desperately wanted to know what they were talking about, he couldn't get too close for fear of blowing his cover. It wasn't until Mio and Toko finally said their goodbyes and went their separate ways that Ryosuke patted Hiroto on the shoulder and said, "All right, let's head home too. Keep walking and we'll end up right in someone's living room. I want to find out where she lives." Ryosuke stared at him in utter disbelief. Are you out of your mind? Stalking a female classmate all the way to her house? All those civics lessons were a total waste on you. I just wanted to drop off a gift for her. She definitely wouldn't accept it directly, so I figured I'd just leave it at her doorstep. Wow, you are seriously... Finally, upon watching Mio enter an apartment building, Hiroto grabbed Ryosuke and turned to leave. Come on, help me go pick out a gift. I want to surprise her tomorrow. Ryosuke sighed with the air of a dying man, radiating profound exhaustion and resignation. Back inside the classroom, Rina was packing up her things very slowly because she was weighed down by heavy thoughts. Yui hoisted her backpack over her shoulder, walked over, and looked at Rina with a puzzled expression. What's wrong with you? You look like you just got dumped. Rina snapped her eyes upward, staring at Yui with a face full of utter despair. Yui instantly clapped a hand over her mouth, realizing she had somehow hit the nail right on the head. When Mio arrived back at the apartment, she noticed the workbook already spread out across the desk, indicating that I had already started studying. Thinking back on the day's events, a heavy wave of guilt washed over Mio. She knew full well that I wanted nothing more to do with Rina, yet not only had she kept quiet about it, but she had actually encouraged Rina. If I ever found out about this, she'd probably end up suffering the exact same fate as Rina. What's wrong? I looked up in confusion to see Mio standing frozen in the doorway, lost in thought. She made a silent vow to herself right then and there. She would never make a mistake like this again. Rina might be her friend, but when it came down to importance, I mattered far more to her. Mio hurriedly put down her things, sat down beside me and said, "Let's get started on your review." At this point, I had to admit that having Mio tutor me was a brilliant idea. At least it gave me a glimmer of hope. Otherwise, judging by my previous study pace, I'd be lucky if my mock exam rank didn't drop even lower, let alone climb 50 spots. Suddenly remembering what happened at noon, how Mio had arrived alongside Toko, and knowing that Mio was aware, "You and Rin are good friends, right?" "Ah, yes." Mio froze for a second before giving a soft, timid reply. A wave of unease rippled through her heart. She felt as though I had somehow figured everything out. In an instant, a dozen worst-case scenarios flashed through her mind. Maybe I would kick her out. Or perhaps from now on, I'd pretend she didn't exist, lumping her in the exact same category as Rina. A moment later, I continued, "Do me a favor. She's a girl, so please talk some sense into her. I'm begging you." Mio blinked in surprise. "You're begging me? Girl problems have to be handled by girls. Toko isn't close with her." As a sense of relief washed over Mio, she also felt a deep appreciation for my trust in her. "Don't worry. From now on, as long as I'm around, I won't let her pester you ever again." With Rina's issue settled, Mio's mind drifted to another question. Should she tell me about inviting Toko over tomorrow? After all, this was my place. At the time, she had just assumed I wouldn't mind and made the decision on her own. Still, it was probably better to check with me first. I invited Toko to come over and hang out here tomorrow. Mio lowered her head slightly, terrified that I might object. After all, she was just someone lodging under another person's roof. She had to tread carefully and be cautious with everything she said and did. However, I simply turned my head back to my work and said, "Actually, I should be thanking you." Back in our first year of high school, I hoped she would make a few friends so she wouldn't be the only one in school with nobody to talk to. But that was seriously overestimating my social skills, so for the past 2 years, it's just been me hanging out with her while you make friends with her. Regardless of how indifferent she looks on the surface, she's probably secretly thrilled. Mio widened her eyes in disbelief. Could things really be as exaggerated as Ren says? She knew she was secretly ecstatic inside, but looking at Toko's usual demeanor, the girl always seemed so completely unfazed. She's actually quite fond of you? Hearing that, Mio's face instantly lit up with a beaming smile, relief and delight sparkling in her eyes. She had been secretly terrified that Toko might secretly dislike her, but hearing those words straight from my mouth put her completely at ease. By a little past 7 p.m., both of us were starting to feel a bit hungry. I started to stand up to make dinner, but Mio grabbed my sleeve and stopped me. Let me handle it. Don't you need to focus on your studies?" Then she added hastily, "I just hope it's to your taste." "Go ahead and try." Since I genuinely wanted to buckle down and study, if Mio weren't here, I probably would have just boiled some instant noodles to get by. Stepping into the kitchen, Mio remembered how she used to cook for her parents back when she was at home. It was a pity she'd never have that chance again. Even though I wanted to squeeze in a bit more study time, my attention kept drifting back toward the kitchen, since I had never seen Mio cook before. I was secretly worried she might make some catastrophic mistake and burn dinner, or suffer some kitchen accident. About an hour later, Mio carried the freshly prepared dishes out to the dining table and called out to me. I stood up and took a look at the spread. A steaming bowl of rice alongside 2 dishes, all looking and smelling exceptionally appetizing. Mio offered a gentle smile, gesturing for me to sit down. I picked up my chopsticks and took a tentative bite. My brow twitched upward in surprise before I gave a quiet nod of approval. "Really?" Mio's suspended heart instantly dropped back into place. Though she was confident in her culinary skills, she had still been terrified I wouldn't like it. Now she had officially passed the test. Mio sat down as well, picking up her utensils. "If you like my cooking, I can make it for you from now on. That way you can save a lot of time." I didn't reply right away. Instead, I glanced over at my home gym corner, realizing it really had been a long time since I last had time to work out. But in my mind, Mio was still a guest. How could I possibly have a guest doing all the cooking? After a moment of hesitation, I spoke up carefully. "How about we take turns or switch every 2 days?" Mio paused for a second. After processing what I meant, a soft understanding crossed her face and she nodded. After finishing dinner, the 2 of us went back to studying. We took turns heading into the bathroom to shower. Once I came out of the bathroom, I sat back down at the desk and picked up my pen. I had planned to study for a few more hours, but a sudden wave of heavy exhaustion crashed over my brain, making my eyelids feel impossibly weighted. I had been running on deficient sleep for the past week straight. Combined with the fact tomorrow was a day off and it was still relatively early, my sleepiness finally won out. I stood up and walked straight toward the bedroom, collapsing onto my side of the bed and falling into a deep sleep before I even had time to pull the blanket over myself. Meanwhile, Mio was still in the bathroom, washing up, completely unaware that I had already gone off to bed. When she finished her shower and stepped out in her pajamas, she found the outer room completely empty. The seat I had been occupying was vacant, and my textbook remained open on the desk. She looked around in confusion. Mio walked over to the bedroom and found me sprawled out across the bed, eyes shut tight and breathing in a steady, even rhythm. She walked over quietly and gently pulled the blanket up over my shoulders. Turning off the bedroom light, Mio slid in beside me on the other side of the bed. Unlike that first terrifying night, she no longer felt nervous. Lying in that bed now felt just as natural as being in her own home. Yet unlike my heavy slumber, Mio wasn't the least bit sleepy. Her thoughts drifted back to everything that had happened today. Without a doubt, the single greatest harvest of her day was making friends with Toko. Thinking back on what I had told her earlier, Mio still found it a little hard to believe. Would someone as notoriously aloof as Toko actually be genuinely happy to be friends with her? Mio pulled out her phone and opened Toko's social media profile, only to find it completely empty, just like mine. If it were Rina's feed, it would be packed with selfies, pictures of gourmet food, and scenic shots from various hangouts. Toko probably wasn't asleep yet at this hour, right? A sudden impulse crossed her mind to send. Mio figured a simple greeting would be best. If Toko was busy, she simply wouldn't reply. With that, she tapped a cute greeting sticker and sent it over. Right after sending it, she locked her phone screen, feeling a fluttering mix of anticipation and nervous suspense. Because Toko was such an unpredictable person, she had no idea how she would respond. After about 2 minutes, Mei Yaoshen's phone rang. She quickly opened it and saw that it was indeed a message from Chiharu, originally Tangji. What's wrong? Shouldn't you be cuddling with Kochi, originally Ji-Yuchi, in bed right now? How do you have time to message me? Yumeran Yin widened her eyes, looking at the message on her phone in disbelief. She quickly glanced over her shoulder to see if Yusuke, originally Zhou Hong, had woken up. If he saw this message, she would probably die of embarrassment. We're sleeping separately, with a futon separating the middle of the bed. You two are really sleeping on the same bed? Tusk! Yumeran realized she seemed to have sent the wrong thing and shouldn't have told Chiharu about this kind of matter. She only knew she was staying at Yusuke's house, but didn't know where she was sleeping. Chiharu sent another sticker to express her current surprise, and Yumera knew that explaining was useless, so she told Chiharu the truth. She had originally planned to sleep on the sofa, but Yusuke wouldn't allow it. After going back and forth, it ended up, and now she had already been staying there for several nights, to the point where she was already used to it. Well, since you're already sharing the same roof, you might as well just make it official. How do you make it official? Yumeran looked at the chat on her phone, her heart pounding wildly. This truly was a conversation that made her heart race. I don't know, this is reaching the blind spot of my knowledge. Don't you get pregnant just by holding hands? Yumeran looked at the message from Chiharu, thinking to herself that she must know a lot, at least definitely more than she did. Thud. Yumeran's phone suddenly dropped from her hand, almost smashing into her face. Her hand froze, completely unable to move, her eyes wide open, her body feeling as if it had turned stiff. Because right now, Yusuke's arm was draped over her. Just a moment ago, Yusuke had rolled over, his entire body straddling the futon in the middle, and his arm had stretched right across, pressing down on her. At this moment, it felt as if Yusuke was hugging her in his sleep. Yumeran mechanically turned her head to look at Yusuke's face, which was only 10 centimeters away from hers. He was still in deep slumber. This was completely an unconscious action on his part. But what should she do now? If she moved around randomly now, she would probably wake him up immediately. Since he was already like this, he must be exhausted. Yumeran simply didn't have the heart to wake him up. After all, over the past week, because of her, Yusuke had definitely endured more pressure and fatigue. Coupled with the exams coming up soon, his stress was even greater. Being able to rest tomorrow would surely let his tense nerves relax, which is why he was so sleepy right now. Sleeping like this was fine too. That way, he could be much more relaxed tomorrow and release a lot of pressure. After pondering for a moment, Yumeran lowered her hand, deciding not to wake Yusuke up after all and let him sleep in peace. If she woke him up, she would feel exceptionally guilty. Yumeran stared at the dark ceiling, unable to close her eyes. She wasn't very sleepy to begin with, and now this situation made it even harder to fall asleep. Feeling Yusuke's sturdy arm gave her an abnormal sense of security, even separated by the futon. She even began to fantasize. What would it feel like if she were lying right in Yusuke's arms? That feeling of being enveloped would surely make someone feel exceptionally secure, right? Just like that, 20 minutes passed, and Yusuke didn't move an inch, letting Yusuke sleep peacefully. At this moment, Yusuke's arm moved. His arm shifted upward a bit, moving directly from Yusuke's stomach area to her chest. Yumeran's body trembled slightly. Her face couldn't be seen in the dark, but her face was extremely burning hot right now. Without even thinking, it must have been very red. Fortunately, there was a futon in between. If there hadn't been a futon, she definitely would have frozen up completely. After another 10 minutes or so, Yusuke turned over once more, returning to his own side and leaving Yumeran with his back. Her tense body relaxed. Otherwise, she felt as if her lower back had been left hanging in midair just now. He probably won't remember anything tomorrow, Yumeran thought to herself, but deep down in her heart, she actually had a slight desire to let Yusuke remember all of this, even though she knew that was impossible. Having endured for so long, Yumeran also felt a sense of weariness, so she closed her eyes and fell asleep shortly after. Yusuke opened his eyes wide, cold sweat seemingly beading on his temples. He was terrified right now. Before rolling over just now, he had actually woken up. Once awake, he realized he was sleeping right in the middle, with his arm resting on Yumeran, and he had no idea whether Yumeran was asleep or not. So he quickly rolled over, returned to his side, facing the wall, shaking with fear. He wondered what he should do if Yumeran wasn't asleep. Would she come interrogate him tomorrow? At that time, he would just say he didn't know. Chapter 34. Your brain must have been squeezed by a music box. Early the next morning, warm sunlight filtered through the glass and curtains, casting a sliver of brightness. Yumeran opened her hazy eyes, taking a few seconds to regain consciousness like a booting computer. She turned her head to look aside and found that nobody was on the bed anymore. Yusuke had already gotten up. She also sat up, tidying her pajamas. After a night's sleep, her bra strap had slipped out. Afterward, she tied up her hair, folded the futon, pulled open the curtains, and walked out of the bedroom. At this moment, Yusuke had just finished making breakfast and was serving it onto the dining table. The two of them locked eyes, and in an instant, last night's events flashed back into both of their minds. Although Yusuke only had the memory of those 10 minutes, he also knew what had happened to him last night. He really wanted to know how long he had stayed like that, and whether Yumeran had been awake at the time. If she had been awake, it would be too embarrassing. If she came to settle scores later, he would just have to play dumb. Meanwhile, Yumeran thought of last night's events, and 2 blushes uncontrollably crept onto her cheeks. This was the first time in her life she had been hugged by a guy, and on a bed, too. At the time, she just felt that the size difference between her and Yusuke was a bit big. If she were in his arms, she would definitely look like a very small little creature to him. Ahem, morning, let's eat breakfast. Unsure if it was out of a guilty conscience, Yusuke took the initiative to speak and greeted Yumeran. This was the first time he had ever said good morning to Yumeran, and it felt a bit unfamiliar. Okay, let me wash up first. Yumeran also noticed this detail and quickly scurried into the bathroom. Looking at herself in the mirror, she immediately splashed her face with cold water to calm herself down significantly. Early in the morning, when her mind was clearest, she didn't want to start a brand new day like this. After finishing her wash, she came out and sat at the dining table, and the two began a quiet meal. Around 9:30 in the morning, 2 people arrived at the entrance of Yusuke's apartment. These 2 were Ryunosuke, originally Lu Yunshuo, and Ryosuke, originally Liang Jiaxiang. At this moment, Ryunosuke was holding a gift box, sneaking down the elevator. As soon as they stepped out, he started looking around left and right like a thief. Ryosuke followed behind, itching to give him a kick in the backside. "Hey, why are you here so early? Are you out of your mind?" "Shh!" Ryunosuke hurriedly turned back and made a quiet gesture to him, almost dropping the gift in his hands onto the floor. "Keep your voice down. Are you an idiot?" At this time, her parents must have gone to work. Even if she has to go out today, she is most likely still at home at this hour, so this time is the best opportunity to give a gift. Then, what if her parents are home? Then I'm not afraid either. Anyway, my intentions are sincere. Since I've decided to pursue her, I'm not afraid of her parents finding out. Ryunosuke patted his chest and said with full confidence. Ryosuke looked at the 3 doors in front of them and said, "Yeah, but there's another problem. You only know it's on the 6th floor. Do you know which door it is?" Ryunosuke's hand froze in midair, and he instantly stood there dumbfounded. He really didn't know which door was Yumeran's home. If he put it in the wrong place and left it at her neighbor's doorstep, that would be a complete disaster. "I'm telling you, yesterday you dragged me along with you, and in the end, whatever you bought, you kept hidden and told me it was a secret." Ryosuke pointed at the gift box in Ryunosuke's arms and asked with suspicion. Ryosuke's brow twisted into a koa shape with a look of utter astonishment, and blinking rapidly, he asked, "Wait, is there a ring hidden inside the music box? Or a necklace? A bracelet?" "It's just a music box, but when you open it, there's a little merry-go-round spinning around. It's pretty nice." Ryunosuke felt Ryosuke's gaze getting weirder and weirder, so his speech became less and less confident, his voice dropping extremely low. Ryosuke took a deep breath, looking like he was about to be angered to death, pointed at him and cursed in a low voice. "Your brain must have been squeezed by a music box. Are you out of your mind? Do you think you're giving a gift to an elementary schooler on Children's Day? What's wrong? You're giving this to someone you like? Could it be that you saw something online labeled creative birthday gift, Valentine's Day gift for girlfriend or something, and felt like this gadget could make people cry with emotion? I feel like this is pretty good. You go ahead and give it. Once you give it, it's completely over for you, and people will be able to laugh at you for the rest of your life. At future class reunions, even if they can't remember your name, they'll just call you that music box gifting guy." "Then what should we do?" Ryunosuke also realized something was wrong and started to panic. "We change it, obviously. Let's go. I'll help you pick a new one. We're going to change it right now." Ryosuke quickly grabbed Ryunosuke's arm and dragged him along, pressing the down button for the elevator and waiting for it to arrive. Just then, a person was standing by the elevator entrance. Underneath a black baseball cap was a neat bob of short hair. A light pink over-ear headphone hung around her snowy white neck. The sleeves of her jacket were rolled up twice, and she wore a small tank top underneath that accentuated her figure. The shorts on her lower body made her legs look exceptionally slender, while the black calf socks added a touch of delicacy. A lollipop was bitten between her thin and elegant lips. Ryunosuke and Ryosuke froze in place the moment they saw the person before them, unable to advance or retreat. "Chiharu. You guys." Chiharu's delicate brows furrowed slightly as she looked at the two in front of them with some surprise. But when she saw the gift box in Ryunosuke's hands, she seemed to understand everything in an instant. They were here to give a gift to Yumeran. "How do you guys know she lives here?" Chiharu took 2 steps forward, walking out of the elevator and forcing Ryunosuke and Ryosuke to retreat step by step. They hadn't expected to run into Chiharu here. She was here to see Yumeran. Ryosuke's eyes glanced at Chiharu's hands, where she seemed to be holding something. Seeing that object, his eyes instantly widened and his eyeballs almost popped out. "PS5? Chiharu was here to play games with Yumeran. Play a PS5. Ryunosuke had no idea what that was, but he was freaking out right now. If Chiharu found out that he had stalked Yumeran yesterday just to find out where she lived and told Yumeran about it, then it would be completely over for him. In his desperation, he blurted out, Itsuki, originally Tong Yining, told me." "Right, she told me. She said Yumeran's home was right here." "Oh?" Chiharu tilted her head, one eyebrow higher than the other, let out a cold laugh, and asked indifferently, "You're saying you asked Itsuki, and she told you Yumeran's home is here? Are you sure?" Chapter 35. "No, I do not accept his gift." "Sure." "Are you sure? Aren't they good friends? It's totally normal for her to know where Yumeran's house is, right?" Ryunosuke felt like he had muddled his way through and breathed a sigh of relief, congratulating himself on his quick reaction. Chiharu let out a cold snort, turned her face sideways, glanced at the gift in Ryunosuke's hands, extended her hand and said, "Give it to me. I'll take it inside for her." "This? Are you going to give it or not?" Chiharu's crescent moon eyebrows arched, a slightly contemptuous expression appearing on her face as if expressing disdain for them. Ryunosuke couldn't stand this kind of look the most, especially when it came from a girl. Hardening his heart out of exasperation, he handed the gift right over and said, "Fine! Then you hand it over to her." Ryosuke, standing beside him, widened his eyes and stared at Ryunosuke in utter disbelief. Was he completely ignoring what he had just said? Chiharu didn't hesitate either. She took the gift and walked toward the door. Ryosuke wanted to say something, But Ryonosuke didn't give him the chance, shoving him into the elevator and preparing to leave. He was afraid that if the door opened in a moment and Yumeran saw him, he wouldn't have any way to explain why he knew about her home. Chiharu knocked on the door, and soon footsteps were heard from inside. As the door opened, the person standing there was none other than Yumeran. "You're here." Seeing Chiharu, Yumeran lit up with a smile, feeling extremely happy. "Yeah. Where's Yusuke?" "He's studying. We just finished breakfast." Chiharu entered the apartment, saw Yusuke studying by the desk, set down her other items, and walked over carrying a paper bag, placing it on the table.